Hello, everyone. This is Ken Quigley from Keystroke. Today, we're going to be covering the rules and tools of online surveys. The agenda today is strategies for building effective surveys, the benefits of CRM integration, and then the technical process of um, building an online survey with ActiveVantage. Okay, so surveys are a valuable tool for businesses or organizations seeking to understand the opinions and preferences of their customers. Everyone knows that. By leveraging survey data, decision makers can make informed decisions that will improve customer satisfaction levels and increase sales. But like anything, good intentions do not necessarily lead to good results. So today's webinar will cover strategies for building effective customer surveys, as I said, the benefits of CRM integration, and then the technical process of actually building one with ActiveVantage. So we're going to start with the theoretical and transition into the practical overview of building an online survey. So let's get started. Okay, um, the first point is to frame the objective of the survey. And I know that seems fairly high level, but there are two major mistakes that businesses often make with surveys. First of all, asking what they want to know rather than what will change their behavior. Okay. Second, trying to learn everything at once. So, practical example of that is asking what they want to know rather than what change their behavior. A survey without a pre-committed action plan is just noise and will drift without a clear scope. And then having one survey with one core objective as opposed to trying to learn everything at once. Okay, so let me give you an example. Identify and eliminate friction in the customer journey. Okay, so if that's your objective, then you're going to be looking to pinpoint specific steps where the customer experience suffers some difficulty or drop off and trigger internal process changes. So that is where we're identifying the information we need to make a change. Another example might be create accountability for customer experience across the different teams inside the business. Link survey results to specific departments, touch points, or rules. Those are the kinds of clear objectives. The next one, and amongst the most important, is design your survey for completion. The best survey is the one customers actually finish. So keep it short. Here's the main points. So 5 to 10 questions is the sweet spot. Start with easy questions um, or even general questions, group related questions together, and then use skip logic to present only relevant questions. Okay. So if we're starting with non-threatening questions to build momentum, grouping relating questions in a logical section. Um, and let's see. Okay. Carry on. Okay, so let's talk about important question rules, okay? One idea per question. No double-barreled questions like, was our product easy to use and affordable? This will produce unreliable data. Avoid leading language. How much did you enjoy our service? This assumes enjoyment. Use balanced scales, equal positive and negative options. For example, 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, not 1 to 4. Okay, prevents a forced bias. Limit open-ended questions. This is good for for many reasons. If you have fixed data types like with drop downs, you're going to be able to get better reporting. But 1 to 2 open-ended questions max. They are high value, but they really reduce the completion rate, and as I said, lend to very poor reporting. Okay, make skip available. I say this without demonstrating what skip means, but really forcing answers to non-applicable questions poisons the data. If you have indicated in an earlier question that you've got no interest in a particular subject matter, and then 2 questions later, you ask a question about that subject matter, it's going to lead to abandonment or even worse answers. Okay. Define rating scales clearly. Always label both ends of every scale. Never assume the user knows which end is good. Avoid jargon. This is something I'm as guilty at as anyone. So write at a grade 8 reading level. Avoid acronyms. Your customers span a wide range. And then to that point, test before sending. Have someone unfamiliar with the topic, even if it's a spouse, complete it and flag any confusion. Okay, so if those are the high level principles of building a survey, why do we care if it's integrated into our CRM? Well, with ActAdvantage, we can actually distribute the CRM in a mail merge so that and create a personalized link. So when they click on it, it it autofills their personalized information and leads them directly into the question. You're going to see an example of that soon, but that's a really easy way of increased, obviously having a more reliable delivery and a higher percentage increase rate or completion rate. New contacts are added to Act and segmented automatically. So you'll be distributing some directly to contacts, but those that are open delivery or distributed, if they get filled out by new contacts, they will automatically be added to the database and their answers recorded to that contact's history. Similarly, with existing contacts, since you're actually doing a mail merge, which is more likely to be the case, those contacts are going to have their history updated with those answers and then segmented into a group. Okay. So why is the segmentation important? Well, if you are trying to create a follow-up campaign, you can send this out to, say, several hundred people. If they fill it out, those people that fill it out get segmented into a group, and then you can have an AMA campaign that fires off the people that go in that group. And it's not a one and done. Every time someone completes it, they get added to the group. You can use list sync with AMA, and it will send out it the very next day. So it really allows you to, not only harvest the data, but, then target those people willing to respond to it with another campaign that's relevant to the subject matter. Okay. Um, you can also build in, this last one is my favorite, the lead triggers, where, and I'll give you an example that we used once. We sent out a survey on whether or not people knew about Act Marketing Automation. So I said to them, I had all these questions, but there was one question that I asked them what they were actually using in advance. Were they using, MailChimp? Were they using Constant Contact? Were they using some other method? And what I did was anyone that answered MailChimp or Constant Contact, I had the survey automatically create a follow-up for me the same day. Okay, so I would have this activity show up in Act for me to follow up with them. So they self-identified themselves as a lead, okay, based on those criterions. Because if they're using either of those email platforms, I know we can offer something of greater value. Okay, so I like being able to build those triggers in. And then the next one, okay, the last one is as a team, I can create a survey that someone else can distribute. Okay, so let's say on my team, for instance, let's say I prepare a survey and I want our marketing team, Carlos, to distribute it. I can prepare it all, make him the record manager, and then he will distribute it. He will get all the results. So there's actually many different examples as to why, or the advantages of having it integrated into a CRM, and obviously ActAdvantage is aptly named for that reason. Okay, so let's consider this. I have created a survey that complies with all the rules that we have put together so far. Okay, so the first is, talking about 10 clear, remember we said 5 to 10 unbiased survey questions on fruit. Okay, they start from the general to the specific, are grouped by relevance, and employ basic skip logic. So things like, how often do you eat fruit? Do you enjoy eating fruit? And then if they answer no, they don't like, then it will jump down to the last one. Okay. What is your preferred type of fruit? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. You can see how it's starting off extremely general, building in skip questions like which berries do you prefer? And then it will only applicable if they've answered the previous question saying berries. The reason I'm showing you all of this is I want to actually demonstrate how this works. Just coming up with a simple list of 10 questions, following the rules that we talked about, okay, covered up here, how we can build those um, into a survey, okay? So let's get started. Okay, so here's the survey that I'm actually going to show you. I have built around. So we're going to actually show you the survey. We're going to show you how some of the different elements work. But before we do, I wanted to show you here. I do cover a lot of the principles. I know the theoretical, is less fascinating than the practical, but I do cover the theoretical here in our blog. So you can click on here, read a little bit more about that. Okay. So here is a survey. So I'm going to put in Huffman. Okay. Oh, you know what? I think I may have left the survey open too long. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the first thing you're going to notice, it's all the sections are organized up here in the navigation bar. Okay, so you're actually going to be able to see when we jump to different questions. Okay, so the first question you guys may recognize, how often do you eat fruit? Let's just say daily. Do you enjoy eating fruit? Oh, yes, very much. Or let's say not really. Boom. They immediately jump to the end. This survey isn't right for them. Okay, so we're going to pick something a little bit more in tune with the fruit survey. So I'm going to say yes, very much. Okay. Now you'll notice that with questions like this, I may want to group them. So I've got, in this case, under fruit preferences, I've got two different questions. Okay. And I can click on here. And then if I select berries, you see here, none of these have skip logic until this particular question. You remember I had a berry question. So I'm in the fruit consumption, and I will go to the next one, berries. Now this one only has one question. You generally don't want a skip logic landing page to have more than that unless you're, really organized and grouping them appropriately. But now if I say here, I'm an apples person, this should jump right to the organic fruit. Okay. Now, again, if I say never, boom, it's finished the survey. Okay. Which now if I go to yes, always, it's going to advance me to the next one. Okay. Getting a little bit of language here. Generally, I get it with this meeting thing. Okay. Also, as a tip, generally do not leave a survey link open like I did in preparation for this webinar. So it's been, kind of open and connected to the API for a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here to close it. And I'm going to show you guys how to actually build that very survey. So now we're going to go into my.app.com, log in, and scroll down to where it says additional features, and I'm going to click on online survey. Okay. Now we're going to click on um, the fruit feelings. Now I could click on a new one, not great television. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the one that we just built, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, here is the very basic um, format of it, and I'll just very briefly go over here. You guys can see the little fruit assembly here that I had at the top. Okay, remember the little navigation menu. Here's where you can control whether or not they display it, hide survey title, hide title, and then there's a remove Act Advantage branding on the footer. I mentioned working as a team where I can actually assign another survey manager. And then here, this controls the answer page. Okay, you can actually create a redirect answer page. So if you want it to go to something that's on your website, you can do so if that works better for your workflow. And then scrolling down, remember I said if you want to have it merge into, um, where you merge it, and by clicking on that personalized link, they will automatically see their information pre-populated into the server, or the survey. You would click on this. Okay. Depending on the survey, you may not want to control people, slanting the results, um, or skewing the results. This is where you can prevent multiple submissions. Okay. Same thing for web forms. Again, a useful tool. And then you can build in different drip activities afterwards here if you want them to be immediately sent to several other emails. You can also create a follow-up activity for every single person that fills out a survey. Not sure that I'm in love with that idea, but it's good to have that club in your bag. Okay. Now, when you create a um, a survey and you give it a name, in this case I called it Fruit Feelings, it will automatically create a group called Fruit Feelings in your database, so you don't have to go to that trouble. And once it's in there, every single person that creates a submission, whether they're an existing contact or a new one, they will all be added into the group. Okay, so that's useful. Copy submissions, anyone that submits, you will get notified, and then you can copy it to someone else if you wish. Okay, the top part is, here is the long, ugly, rather unfriendly URL for the survey, since it is an online survey, but built right within it, you can create a small one, okay? And this is using the little link to shrink utility we built into here, okay? But let's actually get into it. Now, the first thing is you're going to see the contact details, and you're going to have, by default, all of these fields put in. I'm going to say the same thing I say to every time I do a webinar on this subject or on web forms. Do not make the barrier to entry too high. What you're trying to do is capture, just who filled it out, and that's it. If you were looking for them to fill out a job survey, then you can ask them as many questions as you like. But if you want to actually have a higher completion rate, just ask the minimum. One is their name, two is their email. Both are important. Email specifically for looking up and creating the contacts. So that's all I'm going to ask for that. Okay. Now, every panel that you see after this showed up in the, um, in the navigation. Okay. Need to understand that that is called a page. Okay. So if I click on create, I've got the option of creating a page, a question, or a trigger. Now, a page is fairly self-evident. It's a section, it's a panel. A question is a little bit less clear because it doesn't necessarily have to be a question. It could be a picture. It can be some text that you put as a header in here. But for the purposes of this, we're going to call it a question. So what I've done is, um, by default, it puts in this. I can actually enable this as header text, the following sample questions, blah, 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 but I'm going to keep that disabled. So let's take a look at a question here. Now, you'll notice that these are, side by side, because I've selected both of them to be 50% of the screen. So it's using the space a bit more efficiently. I've selected drop down. Try to use drop downs as much as possible. And then I've put the drop down value in here. You don't have to put in any special HTML, bracket, BR, bracket, closing bracket. Just hit enter. Okay. And you can paste these in it if you want. Okay. Here's the label. You can put in an answer hint. Okay, we talked about that, making things as simple as possible. And the answer hint can also include, 1 means bad, 10 means good. Okay. Default answer, sometimes you'll want to have, let's say you send out something that's geographic, you may assume that everyone is going to be from a particular area. There's probably a better example than that, whichever. Okay. Now, Allow multiple selections and allow free-form text input. I'm not going to go through every question feature as we go through this, but I thought the first one is worth it. Okay, so with this, allow multiple selections. That's fairly self-evident. Allow free-form text. Often what you'll have it in drop-down values, you'll have like these 4 values, but if your answer is different, you'll find that some surveys will actually require you to say other, and then another field will pop up. Well, this allows you to actually type over the drop-down values to put in something that you like. Now, keep in mind that every time that you allow free-form text, that is going to impact the reliability of the reporting, because if you've got fixed answers, it is a lot clearer. People can only answer in a certain way. So if you give people the ability to put in wildcard data, then your data is going to be, or your reporting is going to be less reliable. But still, people appreciate it. Okay, so here's my 2 questions. Here's, you can see just different ones of the same. Okay, and you've got these little handles here so you can move them around as you like. And then the moment that you increase it, obviously, increase the width. That doesn't work, but as soon as you put it back to 50-50, it will auto lay itself out. Okay, so here, if this is the page and these are the questions, let's talk about the triggers. Okay, so you can see Q1, Q2. So I've put in a couple of triggers. So all I've done is I've clicked on create, click on trigger, but let's go to this. So the first one, question 2, if the answer is not really or not at all, go to page ending. Okay, we talked about that. If you're not interested in fruit, this survey won't be of interest to you. So immediately bypass it. Okay, question 2, yes, very much. Okay, now what this allows me to do is say, oh, these guys are super interested in fruit. They picked the most enthusiastic answer, schedule a follow-up. Okay, now you didn't see that in the survey questions, but now you can see where you've got a built-in lead trigger. Someone puts their hand up and says, yeah, I absolutely love fruit and I sell fruit, then this is a guy that I want to call. So this guy's put his hand up and said that I'm a lead, and we have allowed the survey to trigger a follow-up accordingly. Okay. Okay. The next one, 2 questions, no triggers. Exact same format. Okay. All very straightforward. Now we're going to go to the 3rd page. Okay. And you can see, again, I'm sticking with the drop-down values as much as possible, but let's take a look here. Question number 6, right here. Okay, answer, berries. So what this means is go to the next page, berries. Question number 6, if they select apples, bananas, and you can just select these and they automatically go in here like tags, it will jump down to the organic. Okay, this guy's raised his hand and says, I love berries. Then I've got a question for him on berries. If they haven't, then it's going to skip over and go directly to the organic fruit. Okay, so no triggers here, but you'll notice that I've only put in 1 question here, because I just don't have a lot of questions about berries. Okay, but if they have said that they love berries, then I want to get a bit more details. Okay, so they've jumped down to the organic fruit. Let's say they've popped over to the, popped over the berries right to the organic fruits. I've got the standard questions, yes, always, sometimes, rarely, never. Let's take a look here. Okay, answer, go to the organic choices. Okay, if they say always or sometimes. Okay, I actually didn't put in a condition here. Okay, so I would click on a condition and I'm going to say answer 8 and then never. Okay, if they say, actually this one looks like that is, okay, that is rarely, never. Go to fruit influences. Let's say yes, always. You see how I can actually add in multiple ones here? I'm just going to say here, and then I'm going to say go to page, show message, modify follow-up activity, Add contacts to a group. That's something else where you can actually build them into a separate group if they have expressed specific interest that's relevant to a campaign that you've created. Okay, but I'm going to leave that for now. Okay, and then the last question is answer 8, rarely or never. Probably organic fruits. I'm going to skip over this and go straight to the fruit influencers question. Here, why do you choose organic fruit? That's not relevant to people that have said that they haven't. And then the fruit influencers, what influences your fruit, your purchases of fruit the most? Okay. Now I can put in some triggers here, again, that have some commercial importance, but I'm not in the fruit business, so I can't think of any. Okay, remember at the beginning, I said that questions don't necessarily have to be questions. Look what I've done here. I've said add in text display. Okay, so I've said a specific type of text display. Okay, I can put in empty space if I want to lay it out a little bit. But here's all the questions types I've got. I've got text, I've got open-ended, which I said use with caution. Text field and open-ended field, just the amount of vertical space it will support, and word wrap. Drop down, that's our preferred. Multiple choice, again, it's basically a drop down with multiple choice. Number slider. Now a slider is extremely useful if you want to have like something where you want to grade something. This gets useful on mobile devices where people may not want to type in an answer and they could just move with their thumb or finger, slide it across. Rating scale, the same kind of thing. Okay, especially a survey related to customer satisfaction. And then final checkbox. The only thing I'm going to mention the checkbox, because checkbox is something that gets people in trouble. What they'll do is they'll say, they'll put in a checkbox question, and then they will say, make it a required input. Okay, so people have got to answer that before they can advance on the survey. Here's the problem. A checkbox, whether it's checked or not checked, is a valid answer. Okay, one is true, one is false. So if you create that as a required answer, you're going to actually break your survey and they won't be able to advance. Okay, I'm not going to get into internal and external variable because it's quite frankly a little bit more advanced and we'll lose people. But as you're building this, okay, you may want to challenge yourself on how well or test your triggers. So what I tell people is always do a save, okay, and then okay, come on, okay, and then go to the sandbox. Okay, now what is different about the sandbox? Well, the sandbox allows you to complete it. You don't have to put in real values. Okay, and you can advance and test your logic. Okay, on this. So let's go back. I'm just going to go back to the ending because I started a theme and didn't finish it. Okay, so we talked about text display, but a question can also be an image. Okay, so we all saw here how I got the image on top, but if I put in no, not at all, here's my answer page with a fruit basket right in the center. Okay, so some nice imagery at the end, but really this image, insofar as the back end of the survey is concerned, is just a question. Okay, so I've laid that out, so it's got a nice thing. I've set the pixel width, I've set the alignment, I've put it to 100%, and that has allowed me to build a survey. Okay, now I have got a number of templates that I can design it with. So the standard one that you've seen here is what we used, the default. The contact us, if you guys have ever seen me do the web forms, the web forms are, when you use Compact, it's not going to have section headers and all the field labels will actually be inside the fields themselves. And then the wizard, which is a little bit more of a walkthrough type layout, a 2-panel layout suitable for presenting questionnaires in a sequence of small steps, that kind of thing. Now, the final customization, okay, you can get into the real nitty gritty of controlling the exact RGB codes of the buttons, of the borders, of the fonts. You can even control what type of fonts. This is where you can really control it, and then each and every single time, just preview your settings. So just to kind of give you guys a quick example, let's say that I wanted to switch over to this. Okay, I can go back, and it's going to show me in a different format, and it's going to put the fruit in here. Okay, not to get too geeky on you, but if you are going to use this format, obviously use PNGs and don't use JPEGs, because that will look kind of ugly in this instance. Okay. Okay, so let me pause and see if there's any questions at this point. I'm going to allow people to use their mics. Let's pause. Let's see if I don't have any chat questions, which is amazing. Anyone want to have any quick shout out questions? Shannon's going easy on me. She's normally my most reliable heckler. Give me a day off, Shannon.
Yes.
Thank you. I thought maybe I muted her by accident. She's not normally this charitable. Okay, so that is the for the large part what I wanted to cover today, how to build a survey. Now, let's talk about some practical things. When should you use a survey versus a web form? Because the web form does have some built-in skip logic, okay? So you can control which questions get presented at certain times. Generally, the important thing to know about a web form is it doesn't typically have a target. Okay, you will put it in as a embedded HTML within a web page, so you can't necessarily know who's going to visit it. It's not something that you will necessarily send out through a direct email and merge in the data. Even though it's supported, surveys are generally more appropriate for direct marketing delivery. Okay. Um, the other thing is there, we talked about the principles of going from general to specific and, not leading questions, things like that. With a survey, because it's much more of an interview format, working you through each panel, skipping what isn't relevant, there are certain types of discovery surveys that are a lot more appropriate in that format. So that's important to keep in mind to understand, which format to deliver your questionnaire on. Otherwise, both will do basic data harvesting. Both will do the reporting. And if I can show you here, if you go back to this, you can click on the results. Okay, we don't have any results on this, but this will allow you to set the filters and see all the results. Now, what I will do, let me just bring my screen over here, is I'm going to bring up, we've got a lot of surveys from the past in our Linktivity screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what some of the survey results look like here off on the other screen, then I'll bring it over. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to find a filter that actually shows some data. Nope. Okay. So let me see here. I'm going to bring over this so people don't sit here and have to listen to. Okay. So if I go here and I click on the results. Okay. I am not getting it. I'll try one more year here. See if I'm. Okay. Here we are. Okay, so here is where you can actually get the results very clearly. Now, this is really quite nice, and you can see how, yes, no questions really are very easy to report on. Which Linktivity products do you like the most? And it breaks it down very, very clearly. So these kinds of results with survey data are fantastic. You get a visual uh, um, representation of what the answers were. And then if you want, you can go over here and get a full breakdown. I'll just go here. Want to be careful. I don't want to expose anyone's answers here, but you can see a breakdown of each and every single response. Okay, so let me go back, see if there's any other questions. Okay. Okay, any questions before we wrap up? I got one chat. Okay, so Sylvia asked a question, can you use the drop down from the drop down fields? Now, that's an important question because it raises the distinctions between contact fields here and questions, okay? Questions have no bearing whatsoever on contact fields, okay? Up here, it would. Now, I'm going to mention something that I generally save for web form questions because people ask me for tips on web forms, and the same really applies to the surveys. You can you can add in fields here um, and create the mappings to add all these fields if you like. Here's the problem. The more fields that you have mapped, the slower it's going to take to process a submission. So, if you've got complaints that people are getting impatient because it's taking, 30 seconds to submit a survey, don't add in all of these fields because when you're clicking on submit, you're essentially um, invoking an API right to all of those fields to up those fields. And each and every one of those fields has different overwrite permissions. Okay, so it can create a bit of a lag. So not only does adding in a lot of these fields as a barrier to entry reduce the completion rate, but it can actually make it harder to submit as well. Any other questions? Groovy. Um, Glad we didn't have to take the whole hour. I hope that this was of value. Again, really wanting to cover both the theoretical and the practical, the rules and the tools of survey. I hope that you guys found this valuable. I love the survey tool. I love the data that it can harvest, and I love the fact that you can use it as both a marketing and a sales tool by building in those field triggers to force follow-up based on important, you know, answers to questions. Okay. So thanks for your time, everyone. Hope this was of value. Enjoy the rest of your day.